The absurdity of life without God. If God does not exist, then both man and the universe are inevitably doomed to death. Man, like all biological organisms, must die. With no hope of immortality, man's life leads only to the grave. His life is but a spark in the infinite blackness, a spark that appears, flickers, and dies forever. Therefore, everyone must come face to face with what theologian Paul Tillich has called the threat of non-being. For though I now know that I exist, that I am alive, I also know that someday I will no longer exist, that I will no longer be, that I will die. This thought is staggering and threatening, to think that the person I call myself will cease to exist and I will be no more. I remember vividly the time my father told me that someday I would die. Somehow as a child, the thought had just never occurred to me. When he told me, I was filled with fear and unbearable sadness. And though he tried repeatedly to reassure me that this was a long way off, that didn't seem to matter. Whether sooner or later, the undeniable fact was that I was going to die. And though that overwhelmed me, eventually, like all of us, I grew to simply accept the fact. We all learn to live with the inevitable, but the child's insight remains true. As John said Truer observed several hours over several years, makes no difference once you have lost eternity. And the universe too faces a death of its own. Scientists tell us that the universe is expanding and that the galaxies are growing further and further apart. As it does so, it grows colder and colder as its energy is used up. Eventually, all the stars will burn out, and all the matter will collapse into dead stars and black holes. There will be no light, there will be no heat, there will be no life. Only the corpses of dead stars and galaxies, over-expanding into the endless darkness and the cold recesses of space, a universe in ruins. A man said to the universe, "Say, I exist." However, replied the universe, "The fact has not created in me a sense of obligation. This is not science fiction. This is really going to happen, unless God intervenes. Not only is the life of each individual person doomed, the entire human race and the whole edifice and accomplishment of human civilization is doomed. Like prisoners condemned to death, we await our unavoidable execution. There is no escape, there is no hope." And what is the consequence of this? It means that life itself becomes absurd. It means that the life we do have is without ultimate significance, value, or purpose. For example, if each individual person passes out of existence when he dies, then what ultimate meaning can be given to his life? Does it really matter in the end whether he ever existed at all? Sure, his life may be important relative to certain other events, but what's the ultimate significance of any of those events? If everything is doomed to destruction, then why does it matter that you influenced anything? Ultimately, it makes no difference. Mankind is thus no more significant than a swarm of mosquitoes or a barnyard of pigs, for their end is all the same. The same blind cosmic process that coughed them up in the first place will eventually swallow them all again. The contributions of the scientists to the advance of human knowledge, the researchers of the doctors to elevate pain and suffering, the efforts of the diplomat to secure peace, the sacrifices of good people everywhere to better the lot of the human race, all this come to nothing. This is the horror of man, of modern man, because he ends in nothing, he is nothing. But it's important to see that man needs more than just immortality for life to be meaningful. Mere duration of existence doesn't make that existence meaningful. If If man and the universe could exist forever, but if there was no God, their existence would still have no ultimate significance. I once read a science fiction story in which an astronaut was marooned on a barren chunk of rock lost in outer space. He had with him two vials, one containing poison and the other a potion that would make him live forever. Realizing his predicament, he gulped down the poison, but then to his horror he discovered he had swallowed the wrong vial. He had drunk the potion for immortality, and that meant he was cursed to exist forever, a meaningless, unending life. Now, if God does not exist, our lives are just like that. They could go on and still be utterly without meaning. We could still ask of life, so what? So it's just not immortality man needs. If life is to be ultimately significant, he needs God and immortality. And if God does not exist, then he has neither of them. Thus, if there is no God, then life itself becomes meaningless. Man and the universe are without ultimate significance. They are of no importance, with no meaning. If life ends at the grave, then it makes no ultimate difference whether you live as a Stalin or as a Mother Teresa. Since your destiny is ultimately unrelated to your behavior, you may as well just live as you please. If there is no eternity, then all things are permitted.